Snaking its way through the countryside of Southern Virginia, this beautiful 3.2-mile strip of asphalt has been around since 1957. But now, for the second time in 3 years, the Virginia International Raceway is home to the SCCA National Championship Runoffs. Welcome to a very wet Virginia International Raceway. I'm John Phippen. I'm one of the play-by-play announcers here this weekend, sitting alongside Tom O'Gorman, who will be doing color commentary, and Hayward Wagner's down in the pit lane, as we will bring you the second race of the 2022 National Championship Runoffs. Touring 1 is the order of the day, but the order of the day is all about the weather, as we've had dry conditions all throughout the week for qualifying, and unfortunately the vestiges of Hurricane Ian, which blasted across the Florida Peninsula and has now taken a left turn and heading back into the Carolina coast, is playing havoc with our weather. And sadly, Tomo, it looks like it's going to be wet all weekend.
Yeah, good morning, John. Great to be back with you. And it's a little bit of deja vu. The last time we raced a Touring 1 National Championship race at VIR, it did the same thing. It rained all over these guys. So it was a very exciting thing to watch because they really weren't expecting it then. Now we've kind of had all week to kind of anticipate, lean forward in our chairs, and we're finally going to race. Exactly right.
And Touring 1, always one of my favorite classes, and we've got some cars in the field that definitely are going to be one to watch. But you know, these high horsepower cars are a handful in these wet conditions because you know, they just don't make any downforce, and they got all kinds of power. So the driver's really got to be ginger with his right foot, and it's going to be a tough race for these guys.
Yeah, I've been kind of saying it all week to different drivers, trying to put them at ease a little, anticipating this rain. That, you know, there are actually twice as many racetracks in the country as everyone says there are, but it's only when it rains that they pop up, and these guys are fortunate enough to get to race this one in the rain. That's exciting.
Down on the grid is the third member of our broadcast team, the SCCA Senior Director of Rally Solo and Experiential Programs, Hayward Wagner. Hayward, you're experiencing some rain down there.
Yes, we're having quite the experience this morning. It's been a light drizzle all morning, not a lot of puddling yet. Right now, it's just a wet surface. Everybody here appears to be on the same tire, the Hoosier H2O. Not a lot of difference in tire. What we do have a pretty big difference is in car. We have the Mustang on pole, BMW outside pole, then Viper, then Corvette. Biggest difference in these four cars, the Mustang is a solid rear axle. And in the rain, Andrew Aquilante has said that he may drive that car in GT2, even though it's down on power to the rest of the GT2 field, because that solid rear axle Mustang puts power down so well. Think of it this way, all these other cars are set up with some amount of rear camber, some angle on the rear tire to make them grip mid-corner. Andrew has to make his car work mid-corner with flat rear wheels, which means in the wet, he's putting more tire to the ground than anybody else is.
Andrew Aquilante, your pole sitter in that black Phoenix Mustang, obviously going to be one of the favorites here. Andrew is notched his 19th pole position and 6 in a row, both of which are records for the entire SCCA National Championship Runoffs history.
Well, that's a tip that Hayward just kind of blew out of the water. Andrew Aquilante did let us know about that. In a couple of days' time, he was considering, if it is this wet, maybe we'll change the cars, because that Mustang is actually a lot better in the wet, as are the rest in the field for the majority. Better in the wet than you would expect. But now Hayward's blown that one open, and the lack of dynamic movement in the back of that stick axle car, it makes it really, really good to point and shoot here in the wet. And in the wet, you make your time just shooting off the corner, get to the next corner as fast as possible. Cornering speeds are not nearly as important.
This will be the first time these guys, any of these drivers this weekend, have experienced this the track this weekend in the wet. So there's going to be some experimentation in the early going, finding out where the rain line is.
Yeah, there is also a car that we should watch is the Dodge Viper from Tim Myers. The last time, as we alluded to, they did race their national championship race here in 2019 in the wet, and Tim didn't have either the time or the option to go to the rain tires, so he suffered in misery on dry tires in similar conditions. He's sitting there third. Nice to hear from Hayward that he actually has the rain tires this year. He was joking, hey, if it rains, should I just throw the dries back on too, for old time's sake? Like, no, put the good ones on.
Exactly right. We have 10 cars in this field, and they are rolling away from the false grid behind the safety car. So let's introduce those 10 starters for you. We'll start at the back in the 5th row on the outside. The father of our pole sitter, Joe Aquilante, in the number 32, veteran campaigner. Out of Chester Springs, Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia region, in the Phoenix Chevrolet Corvette. Joe didn't turn a time in the first 2 days of qualifying, but set his qualifying pace on the final day. So good to see Joe back in the field. Starting alongside him in row 5, the number 42 of Paulo Salvatore out of San Antonio, Texas, and the Houston region, also in a Ford Mustang FP350S. In row number 4 on the outside is car 7, Timothy Rubright, out of Klutztown, Pennsylvania, in the Washington, D.C. region, in another Mustang. Next to him is the number 88 of Robert Corzin, out of Fredericksburg, Virginia, the Washington, D.C. region, in a Ford Mustang. Robert is picked by Sports Car to finish on the box, starting from 7th position. In row 6, or excuse me, in row 3, in 6th is the 07 of Sandy Sotullo III, out of Hillsborough Beach, Florida. Races out of the Ohio region, the Northeast Ohio region, in his BMW E92 M3, one of 3 BMWs in the field. Next to him is the number 23 of Hugh Stewart, out of Milford, Connecticut, and the New England region, in another of the 2003 BMW E46s M3. In row number 2 on the outside, car number 86, Joseph Gaudette, out of Manassas, Virginia, the Washington, D.C. region, in his Chevy Corvette. Next to him, the aforementioned Tim Myers, car number 2, out of San Antonio, Texas. He races out of the Atlanta region in the only Dodge Viper in the field, an ACR-X. Now for the front row and a couple veteran campaigners. In his 36th runoff appearance, Mark Boden in the number 46 car out of Buffalo Grove, Illinois, and the Chicago region. Mark, of course, the major domo of Fall Line Motorsports, in his BMW E46 M3. And on the front row, the pole sitter, again with a record-setting 19th pole, 6 in a row. And that is Andrew Aquilante in the number 33 out of Chester Springs, Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia region, in the Phoenix Performance Ford Mustang. He has had 6 poles in a row. He is the 11-time national champion, including defending champion. And Mark Boden, a 4-time champion in the class, most recently in 2020. As we can see the field snaking behind the Mazda Miata pace car. Tomo, take us around this 17-turn circuit.
Yeah, it's a great one. To get the cliche out of the way, described by Paul Newman as heaven on earth. It's a long front straight down into a slightly downhill, then uphill braking zone into turn 1. This is the most technical section of the track to lead the lap off into NASCAR corner at turn 3. Then the most slippery section of track you'll ever experience in Virginia is turns 4 and 4B there in the wet. That's a very treacherous spot. If we make it through there on the first lap, we're probably in good shape. Then we're getting into the lower S's at 5A, B, 6A, B, into the uphill S's. That most iconic picture you'll find of sports car racing is often of, if it's not the Oak Tree corner at VIR, it's the uphill S's here at VIR in 7, 8, and 9. Then in South Bend, a super tricky corner, very, very high speed, close to 100-mile-an-hour min speed in the dry. Not quite that in the wet here at turn 10, uphill into that famous Oak Tree corner, then down that very critical back straight. Turn 12 is going to be key to get lap time both in the wet and the dry. Then a heavy braking zone at turn 13 for the roller coaster, turns 14 and 15, dropping a bunch of stories downhill straight into the hog pen corner at turns 16B and 17. That's a lap of VIR.
3.27 miles, the length of this racetrack. These races will be 15 laps or 40 minutes, whichever comes first.
A couple of things I'm sad to see. First of all is Hugh Stewart does not appear to be on the grid, and he actually kind of surprised himself by getting onto the podium in 2019. Pulled him over for his interview, and he's like, why am I here? Well, he had ended up on the podium in a very similar condition race to this and didn't even realize it, but unfortunately I think a mechanical issue in qualifying retired that car for the week. And we shouldn't discredit Mark Boden. That car is not a very torquey V8, so that should be pretty good in the wet, as much as we've talked about how good the Mustang will be.
And Joe Aquilante also elected not to take the start. So the father-son duo, not a factor here, is the field nicely formed up, coming through Hog Pen, as they will come under the attention of the starter, Andrew Aquilante and Mark Boden, the 2 veterans and the only 2 former champions in the field. As the field now begins to pick its way down the front straightaway, lots of spray being kicked up. The windshield wipers are on as we await the green flag, as the high horsepower Touring 1 cars see the green, and Aquilante gets the jump, and coming up right behind him is Tim Myers, it looks like.
No, that's Sandy Sotullo.
Oh, Sandy
It's a
Sotullo.
great jump as Tim Myers decided, I don't think this is a great place for me to be. He actually pulled over and let the whole field go. Those are the headlights in the background, but now into the braking zone of turn 1. Sotullo, a big push towards the outside of Boden. Boden on the preferred rain line, but Sotullo gets the job done up to 2nd.
Indeed, as he makes his way through turn number 1.
Oh.
And we got a spin already, and that's the 86 Corvette of Joseph Gaudette as he loops it, and he's going to fall all the way to the back. As as one of the safety vehicles following the field around on the first lap, as they are wont to do. Again, just as a safety precaution.
You can see the rain coming down much harder now. I think this race is going to get wetter and wetter as we go, but there the red Corvette of Gaudette probably gets up on the cam just a little bit and goes for a quick ride on the dry line, loops it and keeps it out of any danger, so that's great to see.
Well, Robert Corson having to do a little evasion there to get around, but Aquilante out in front over Sandy Satullo. What a great start for Sandy as they come through the climbing S's for the first time. And Andrew Aquilante coming into the very tricky turn 10, South Bend it's called.
It's a great start for Sandy Satullo there on camera in the dark blue BMW. He started 6th on the grid thanks to Hugh Stewart's retirement. He actually did roll off in 5th. Then Tim Myers pulls over and he finds himself 3rd at the green flag, races his way up to 2nd, and that BMW is looking strong. It's curious, this may be a driver that has a lot more experience racing in the rain coming out of Florida. Certainly they're going to get more rain there than other parts of the country, and he's certainly putting it to good use.
Mark Boden, of course, right behind him, so a pair of BMWs on the box right now, as it is Aquilante, Satullo, and Boden as your top 3 as they crest the hill and then head back down toward the roller coaster. Very tricky in the wet. It's tricky in the dry, but in the wet especially, as water running across the racetrack there down in the depression, as Boden really closing up under brakes right on Satullo's back bumper.
Yeah, if you could pick one of these 2 cars to be, I'd actually think I'd want to be Boden, because I have an identical car in front of me to gauge off of all of my decisions. When do I brake? Where do I drive? Did he make a mistake? Okay, I don't want to do that. So Boden can kind of take his time figuring out his Satullo big slide through Hogpen and keeps the BMW pointed the right way. The problem for Boden with taking that strategy is he's losing a lot of time to Aquilani, who is already up to the tune of probably 6 to 7 seconds on this first lap.
As they come across the stripe, we'll get the update on timing and scoring. But yeah, 8 seconds already for Andrew Aquilante out in front as these 2 BMWs slugging it out for second spot. Boden's going to try to go around the outside and gets it done.
It does. It actually looked like Satullo kind of let that happen. He was very early on the brakes and kind of came off the pedal as they come into the braking zone. So now maybe he wants to run that strategy. Maybe Boden knows a little bit more than I do. Kind of let that driver continue to show me the way. But Boden's starting to pull away very, very quickly in that fall line car.
You can see them well off the apex as they come through NASCAR. That's where the grip is. The normal racing line, the dry racing line, is very slick with all the oil and rubber on the racetrack in a very smooth circuit. And so you'll find these drivers hunting for places where they normally would not run, looking for the best possible grip under these conditions.
Yeah, Virginia International Raceway was repaved in 2014, so it's been almost a decade since this track has seen new pavement. But this track does get a lot of use. They run a lot of manufacturer testing here, a lot of driver development schools. This track is probably in use most days of the year, so 10 years is not that long for this pavement, but it does see a lot of wear, as you see now. Definitely a lot of spray coming off of that Aquilani machine. I think it's just getting absolutely soaking wet out there.
Andrew Aquilani coming off of the Oak Tree Bend and making his way down the back straightaway, known as Madison Avenue to the locals, as they pass the South Pits there off camera left. It's a very undulating circuit. There's a lot of vertical here as they climb the hill to that sort of hump right in the middle of the back straightaway. Then it's back downhill and then back up again, and then 130 feet of vertical drop off right here at the roller coaster.
This Phoenix Performance team has been running Mustangs since about 2011, so this generation Mustang is kind of where they introduced themselves to the Mustang chassis and have continued to develop into that independent rear suspension chassis that they run in some other cars. But with about a decade of information of this car, it's highly unlikely Andrew has not driven this car in these conditions, probably a lot more than most people have driven in the rain, period. So he's got a lot of experience with what is going on in these very specific conditions, so much so that he's more confident in this car classing up, as we heard later in the week, if we get to another rain race on Sunday.
Making his way down into turn number 1. The car a little squirrely under the braking. As you can see, he's experimenting with just how deep he can go into that horseshoe bend. And he's stepping the rear end out. Andrew's not afraid to put, give it a little welly, as they say.
Yeah, rear steer off of turn 1 into turn 2. This is a tricky gauge, right? Do you want to go faster and faster every lap? Do you want to maximize what you can do out of this car? Or do you look in your rearview mirrors and see, oh, I've got 17 seconds now. I just need to cruise for the next 34 minutes. I think I know Andrew well enough to know he's going to try for the first.
Exactly right. Exactly right. As he works his way into the snake the lower S's, if you will, and then the very famous climbing S's. Every driver I've talked to about this racetrack says, so what's your favorite part of VIR? Everyone, to a man and a woman, says the climbing S's is my favorite spot of this racetrack.
Yeah, it's a spectacular piece of pavement. And it looks like Mark Boden has put about 40 seconds now on Sandy Satullo. But looking back at this battle, another one of those stick axle Mustangs is putting himself in contention for the podium. That's the 88 of Robert Corzin.
Corzin started way back in row number 4 and has made his way forward. Corzin is the only driver in the field that is at least mathematically eligible for the Super Sweep. The Super Sweep is the win of the U.S. Majors Tour Conference Championship, winning the Hoosier Super Tour Championship, and winning the runoffs. But Joseph needs some help in order to score that win. Mark Boden and Sandy Satullo would have to be DNFs. So that's going to be an uphill struggle, as Sandy Satullo stretching that advantage back out just a bit as they come through the climbing S's.
Certainly put a couple more car lengths on Corzin, who may have had a little slip exiting the lower S's, but also keep an eye on the red Corvette in the background. The fastest of the 3 cars that you see in 3rd, 4th, and 5th was the red Corvette of Joseph Gaudette, by about 6 seconds quicker than Corzin, who was 10 seconds quicker. There is that Gaudette machine, 10 seconds quicker than Satullo.
Remember, he had a spin there at the start there in turn number 1, fell all the way to the back. He's already picked his way back up to 5th, and now he's going to try to challenge for that 4th position.
This battle for the bronze medal is compressing pretty quickly in front of us. That's going to get very exciting as those 3 cars, the blue BMW of Sandy Satullo falling back in the clutches of that gold Mustang, and then the red Corvette coming up from behind. It's getting a lot closer. This is a great run for Gaudette.
Corzin with the advantage right now in the Mustang. Mustang's very heavy in this field, as we've got Aquilante, of course, and then Corzin and Timothy Rubright, as well as Paolo Salvatore, all in the Mustangs. But the Corvette looking strong here in these wet conditions as they come down the hill through roller coaster down into the hog pen turn, so named because when this course was originally made, there was a hog pen off to the driver's left at the exit of that turn. The hog pen is long since gone, but the name of the corner still remains.
Sandy Satullo finds an extra gear that lap and is checked out by another. He actually put 10 seconds back on Robert Corzin. So that blue BMW you saw exiting turn 1 way off in the distance, but this race for 4th is getting pretty spicy with Joseph Gaudette running down Robert Corzin by another 3 seconds that lap. I think he is there.
Timothy Rubright in the distance in the number 7 car in the 2012 Ford Mustang, running in the 6th spot. But this is the best battle on the racetrack right now between Corzin and Gaudette as they duke it out for 4th position. Gaudette a little later on the brakes, coming into the left hook, and maybe left it a little too late as he sliding his way through. But as you said, a very tricky and very damp section of the racetrack right there. You've driven this track in the wet, so you know where the danger spots are.
And I may have had a little incident in that corner, so I know for a fact that corner is a bit challenging. It's definitely the most challenging corner on the track in these wet conditions, and that's partially because it's a great passing zone, so you end up side by side there a lot, and it's also one of those corners that kind of baits drivers to turn in a little too early. So you have drivers running wide on exit, turning in early on entry. That means that polish, that polish we talked about with the wet, kind of mattering a lot more. There is no virgin pavement in that corner. It's all used, as now that Joseph Gaudette has caught up to Robert Corzin in the Mustang, getting by around the spray and on a very single file racetrack as it becomes in the wet is going to be a very different challenge.
Yeah, we'll see who's got the better straight line speed, gets the better jump off of this most important turn on the racetrack, because it leads onto the longest straightaway as he pulls out to try to get out from under the spray of Corzin's Mustang. Quite able to get side by side as the Mustang showing some good straight line speed as they climb up over the rise and back down the hill.
And that may very well be due just down to the stick axle acceleration off of Oak Tree.
Yeah.
The Corvette tends to be a little quicker in a straight line. You see the lack of aero and the slippery body that car has, but the Mustang was able to put the power down, drive away. Gaudette thought, maybe I'll go right. No, maybe I'll go left, and neither became an option.
Exactly. So he's just going to hang right there for the moment, at least. See if he can challenge for 4th. There are obviously places on the track where he feels he's a little stronger. Corzine obviously in the same situation. He's going to try to stay out in front of that Corvette, as there are some spots on the track where he's got the advantage. As once again, Gaudette pulling to the side, trying to get out of the spray. Normally he would tuck right in on the back bumper, as that Mustang really appears to have some straight line speed.
Yeah, I'm curious if Gaudette actually was uncomfortable with the level of spray and kind of backed off a little as he saw him move over to the side, but also back down. Is in the background a big ride for Timothy Rubright, and that Mustang goes way off at hog pen, and just saw that car in the background through the mist have a big moment up the front straight. There he is.
Yeah, off into the grass, off driver's left at the exit of hog pen, right on the front straightaway, and he may be beached there. Oh, looks like he's got it rolling. With this wet grass, it's going to get wetter as the weekend wears on, sadly. As we can see him come down here. That was a high speed off, as he just carried way too much speed down the hill through hog pen and off early, and but able to get back underway. I don't know if he lost a spot, if Tim Myers was able to get by. Myers was 39 seconds up the road, so he may well have been able to hang on. As there's the 42 off, that's Paolo Salvatore.
This is the only non-stick axle Mustang in the field. This is the newer generation independent rear suspension. But going back to Timothy Rubright, who did, we can confirm, lose a position to Tim Myers in the Viper. So he is down to 7th in the number 7 car. That looked like maybe more of a hydroplane incident where he was way down the straightaway from hog pen. So he was either tank slapping for a little while or had a bit of a float. And as good as these rain tires are in the wet, there's only so much you can do to dissipate that water through the puddles. And with how much heavier this rain has become, the hydroplaning is going to become a serious problem on the straightaways.
And right there at the bottom of the hill, that may be an area where there's water running across the racetrack, which makes it even doubly treacherous down in that area. As once again, Gaudette pulling off to the side, trying to get out of the spray, giving up the advantage that the draft would normally give him, as he tries driver's right, tries driver's left, and then falls back in single file. He's a little closer than he was a lap ago. Is he going to try to do an outbraking maneuver into the roller coaster? Not quite.
It just becomes so tough because these drivers know where the grip is at this point, and they're at least comfortable with where that is. Going side by side means one of you can't be where you want it to be, and making a pass in that situation is very tricky. Now, Gaudette is doing a good strategy of keeping the pressure applied. Just try to make Robert Corzine make a mistake here, but I think Corzine is looking very, very consistent and very under control in that Mustang.
Yeah, he's obviously not doing what Gaudette wants him to do, which is make a mistake. But with the commentator's curse, we may have just caused him to do so. We'll see. But once again, on the straightaway, he is just able to pull. He gets such a great grip off of the hog pen turn and really opens up an advantage down the front straightaway.
Yeah, and where Joseph Gaudette is backing off is similar to where we saw the number 7 car of Timothy Rubright have that major loss of control down the front straightaway. I have to wonder if there's some hydroplaning there that either certain cars have figured a way around or is not affecting certain cars as much. But it looks like Joseph Gaudette is giving himself that buffer intentionally for good reason in that one spot down the front straight.
Yeah, and obviously with the spin on the first turn of the first lap, he's probably a little gun shy coming into turn 1 anyway, so he'll have to get his confidence back and keep his braking point a little later there.
Got away with one already. Don't want to attempt the second, right?
Exactly right. Get off into the mud here, and it'll be a long afternoon for sure. As Andrew Aquilante has opened up a 42-second lead after just 5 laps. Sandy Satullo a further 27 seconds back. Corzine leading this battle another 13 seconds back. He is just about 40 seconds behind the second place car. As Andrew Aquilante, we haven't talked much about him, but again, the 11-time champion, there he is. As he is well out in front, already beginning to has caught the back of the field, already beginning to lap cars after just 6 race laps.
Yeah, Tim Myers in the background there is 6th on the track. Is a big flat slide for Aquilante. Still taking little risks here and there, but probably in the rhythm at this point as the rain is just pummeling down. But he's lapped up to 6th position on this 10-car field.
After only 6 laps, so more to come, I would guess, for Andrew Aquilante, a second-generation racer. Father Joe was scheduled to be in the field, but elected not to run in these conditions, and I don't blame him. Joe's a veteran campaigner. As Mark Boden still hanging on to that second spot, 49 seconds behind Andrew Aquilante. Boden, a driver well known in Porsches as well as BMWs, and as we said, he's one of the principals of Fall Line Motorsports, one of the super teams in sports car racing in this country. They've got their fingers in just about every sports car racing discipline. And there's Sandy Satullo in the blue number 07, running in third spot. Sandy qualified back in row 3 and got a great jump on the field to move his way up into the third position. As we're approaching the halfway point, we'll take just a few minutes break to allow us to thank some of the folks that make this broadcast possible, Mazda among them. So we'll be back with you with the second half of the second race of the runoffs, the Touring 1 National Championship, in just a few minutes' time.
Focus, guys. We're in a race to the finish, okay?
Here's where the rubber meets the road.
These initiatives move the needle, like, at all?
Well, let's shift gears a minute.
We're really kind of at the apex here.
We need to put the pedal to the metal. We need to nail those hairpin turns, cross that finish line, and take that checkered flag. Woo!
Hit the track with the world's largest motorsports calendar, track day insurance, and more. Haggerty. Let's drive together.
Introducing the first ever Mazda CX-50.
What a great battle we're watching in Touring 1, and that is the battle for fourth position, as it's been nose to tail all race long. Welcome back to the Touring 1 National Championship. I'm John Phippen alongside Tom O'Gorman and Harry Haywood Wagner down in the pit lane as the third member of our broadcast crew. But we've been following this battle, Tomo, for the first half of this race, and Joseph Gaudette just can't find a way around Robert Corzine.
No, he's been working every angle that he can think of so far, but these conditions are just so challenging, especially with the single file nature. Makes a little bit of a lunge, keeping the pressure on the back of that yellow number 88. But the 86 of Gaudette has yet to find the way around or promote the mistake that he really needs.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. At that long back straightaway, Gaudette is able to stay right with Corzine, but right here, when they come onto the front straightaway, something goes awry, because on the last several laps, Corzine has just been able to jet away here on the front straightaway. This time, Gaudette staying a little bit closer, but I think that little depression right there at the pit entrance may be kind of a danger point. And look at him pull away. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You don't see that on the back straightaway. That's just really strange.
In that lap, we finally saw the twitches we were looking for. The red Corvette looks very nervous down the front straight, and it's not a straight. That's the problem here. Is you have to turn just a little bit right, and we saw what is in the car, a big wiggle, visually a small wiggle, but the little kind of shimmy that Corvette did down the front straight, right when Corzine really pulled away. You can tell that Gaudette is really working hard, and I have to wonder if maybe there's a tire size choice or a setup choice that is causing maybe more hydroplaning problems for the 86 than the Mustang just in front.
Yeah, interestingly, like I say, he's able to make that ground back up here through the twisty bits as they go through left hook and then into the snake. And by the time he gets to the Oak Tree Bend, he is right back on the back bumper of Corzine's car. So obviously that Achilles heel onto the front straightaway, one of the prime passing opportunities on this racetrack, is going to be a tough nut to crack here. He's going to need to get that pass done on the back straightaway and hopefully build up a little bit of an advantage, or Corzine will blow right back by him the next time they come down the front straight.
That's very true. That's a great point. Is he'll need to build a little bit of that gap when he hits the front straight. If that car is not confidence inspiring, we'll say, down the front straightaway, he's going to need a little bit of a gap. But this is where they always close up and compress, right at the Oak Tree corner. Little wiggle again for the Corvette, and to his credit, Robert Corzine has been absolutely picture perfect up to this point. Not even a slip from that Mustang that we've seen on camera. He's doing a fantastic job. As you can see, the yellow gloves, just smooth hands through the entire corner.
Exactly. Gaudette right on his bumper this time, maybe as close as he's been as they make the run down the back straightaway. Past the south pits. A little bit of a depression and then climbing up to the top of the hill. He's alongside, but Corzon's car is good in a straight line, and he's going to guard that inside line. But this time, Gaudette may have gotten it done. He's going to be deep on the brakes. Can he get it woed down? That's the question.
Oh, he's in really deep. He barely keeps it on, but that outside line has a little bit more grip and gets the job done. So the 86 of Joseph Gaudette finally, after trying the right side up that straightaway a number of times down the back straight, goes left and gets the job done.
And now we're coming into an area of the track where he has really been a little tentative. Let's see if Corzon can get back by him on the run down the front straightaway. Corzon having to deal with the spray now for the first time. We'll see how that affects his run down the front straight. Same situation. Again, it may be the following car is at a disadvantage for some reason coming off Hogpen. Is Gaudette really opening up some ground, but this is where he spun on the very first lap of the racetrack, so he's going to be a little cautious here into the horseshoe.
You can see the slight breeze actually blowing the mist off these cars towards the pit lane, which means the visibility as you round this right-handed front straightaway is poor to the direction you want to look. That may be the issue for the following car, but Gaudette, now that he's got some clear air, is really checking out. Do want to call out also the third place car of Sandy Sotullo has turned the second fastest lap of the race. He is in a position where he might find himself catching Mark Boden as we have about 5 laps remaining in this 15-lap race.
Yeah, on his last lap, Sotullo set his personal best at a 2:27.4. Mark Boden on that lap was a 2:30.6. He's got 25 seconds to make up, so it's doable, but it's going to be a tough call. But Sandy Sotullo doing a great job in that blue number 07.
That math works out about 10 seconds short to Mark Boden's advantage. He will still win this race, but Andrew Aquilante lapping at a 2:19.9. So if Sotullo can continue to find, even 2-3 seconds per lap, all of a sudden that 25-second lead for Mark Boden that we see here now navigating the Hogpen corner, very, very composed for this E92 BMW. Right now, he's got no indication that he may be under threat, other than perhaps a team member in his ear telling him, hey, Sotullo's catching you. Exactly right.
So Mark Boden in that number 46 fall line BMW coming across the stripe to complete, and he has turned up the wick, sets his personal best at a 27.7, and that is pretty much matching the pace of Sotullo. So I think you're absolutely right, Tomo. I think the crew got on the horn and said, hey, this guy's catching you. So he's turned it up. Look at him slide through the horseshoe. It's Timothy Rubright going a lap down to that battle. As Mark Boden coming through NASCAR, so named because it's a sweeping left-hand turn. Short shoot down to the left hook, as you said, Tomo, a very tricky part of this racetrack. You
can hear the patience on throttle that Boden has with picking up the power in that V8 BMW, and that's where the more preferable rear suspension, arguably, in this BMW would help in the dry, but in the wet, we've seen that Andrew Aquilante is able to put the power down. Even if the car steps, he keeps the car going forward, and that's where that rear axle is helping a lot. As now Tim Myers goes down a lap to the second place driver. Here's Aquilante already up onto the front straightaway, though. Can he lap Boden?
I don't know. He's about to lap Corzon as he is closing up on the, in fact, goes by our 5th place runner. So now only 4 laps, 4 cars remain on the lead lap as we are working race lap 11 of this one. As Andrew Aquilante, we haven't talked much about him as he is so far out in front for the second race in a row. We've got a runaway leader in this race, and the wet weather conditions, they say it's the great equalizer, but the cream still rises to the top, and Andrew Aquilante, an 11-time winner of the runoffs, certainly knows his way around this racetrack in the wet or the dry.
And these are very intense conditions to lap in. So while he may have turned, at this point, 11 laps pretty solo on this racetrack, this is among the more intense national championships he'll be contending for, because these conditions, as you can see, the back end of the car just dancing through the lower S's as he keeps his foot down. This is just kind of that blackout, horse blinders on and look forward, drive the car kind of race.
Exactly right. Don't make any mistakes. Hit your marks. That's what it's all about, and he is doing just that. Andrew Aquilante certainly very much in command here. As Gaudette looks like he is still at pace in the number 86 Corvette, currently running in the 4th spot. His last lap was his fastest, a 2:28.8 for Joseph Gaudette. It's about 8 seconds off the pace of the leader. It looked like he got about as wide as you want to get.
I was wondering, we cut to that angle and he looked a little wide, so I'm glad we got that replay. Takes all the track and a little bit more. At this point, that mud might have about the same level of grip coming out of South Bend.
Exactly right.
It's a great recovery.
That's a hard-in-the-mouth moment in the climbing S's for sure. But Gaudette back up to speed. Oh, look at that car fishtail under the brakes as he gets onto the binders, and it's trying to get sideways on him. But he's able to gather it back up as he makes the 130-foot plunge down the roller coaster. It is, as you so often say, the camera does not do that downhill section justice. It is a lot steeper than it looks on camera. And here comes Andrew Aquilante about to put him a lap down.
We were able to walk the track a couple of days ago, and it kind of dawned on me, if it looks pretty hilly on camera, it's a lot more hilly than it is. And if it looks kind of flat, it's actually a lot more hilly than you think it is too, as we see now down into the braking zone. This is actually kind of downhill. The cars will drop another maybe 10 feet, rise back up through the turn-in point. Some details of elevation at VIR that I had never even noticed, having driven here myself.
Yeah, exactly. As Andrew Aquilante now, only 3 cars remain on the lead lap.
Resets his personal best lap time again at a 2:19 flat. So this car is just getting quicker and quicker as he gains confidence, and he's picking off tenths at this point. So he's kind of finding the fine detail as the car slips a little bit coming out of NASCAR into turn 4. You see him running that nice wide rain line, trying to get the power down now into the snake.
It may be counterintuitive, but is it possible that as these rain tires wear just a little bit, they become more slick-like? Does he have a little more grip in the drier spots?
What's more likely is he's actually building some tire temperature. So
yeah.
In these conditions, the tire still wants temperature to work, but you are going out on a cold racetrack in cold rain with cold tires. So it's very difficult to build that temperature. And now that we're working lap number 12 of 15, or coming up to lap 12 of 15, I should say, this car is probably put at least up to ambient temperature in the tires, if not built a little bit of heat when you put your hand on it. It may be a bit warm at this point.
Right, and that obviously helps with the grip. I'm really surprised as he's coming up through the climbing S's. He's using the curb, and those curbs are so slick because they're painted. And he is really not afraid to grab a little curb, shorten those turns up a little bit, try to straight line those S's. As he's going around Paolo Salvatore for the second time now.
Yeah, just in front of Paolo is this car, the number 2 of Tim Myers, who had dropped back a little bit and then was able to now get his position back from Paolo Salvatore. But he has the right tires this year, but I can still tell just from the body language of the car in these 2 corners we've seen that car is a big handful. And that's what you would expect from the Dodge Viper in the wet, a big torquey V10.
Yep.
It really hits the power hard as well. It's a pretty low torque engine up to an RPM, and then all of a sudden you get a ton of power. This car is definitely not the one I'd pick for these conditions, but Tim indicating, go to my left, go around me when you can, over on the right side of the track for the last couple laps of this race, circulating still in the 6th position.
Yeah, you can see that turn signal on. That's the driver's way of indicating to the overtaking car which side to pass on, or which side he expects you to pass on. And Sandy Satullo, our 3rd place runner, gets that pass done. Satullo didn't set a personal best on that last lap. Mark Boden did. So Boden, again, getting the message that Satullo might be a bit of a challenge, has upped his pace, set his personal best on the last lap at a 2:26.6. He's well adrift of the leader, but 29, almost 30 seconds now in front of the blue number 07 of Sandy Satullo. Satullo in the BMW, working his way through the climbing S's. Yeah, the BMW is looking really stable in these conditions, but I think they're maybe down a little bit in straight line speed, and that's really kind of put him at a disadvantage, I think.
Yeah, you can also see a little bit more of a stock body look to this car, as Boden's is a nice flared out look, a much wider stance to that car. But Sandy Satullo's car also looks a bit softer, a little bit more body roll through the corners, and that's going to be grip as it gets to the ground, whereas Boden's car has looked very, very flat. So perhaps just either a build difference or a setup difference between the two cars. Obviously, Boden is able to continually lap a little bit more consistently, but this car does look nice and compliant as down deep in the brakes, a little twitch into the roller coaster, and then confidently out to the outside line. There is that wider, kind of wide body E92. And you can see a little bit less body roll as he turns in, almost none here at turn 1.
So Mark Boden, 1 minute and 33 seconds behind our leader, Andrew Aquilante. And bit of a surprise, I think. Mark Boden, again, an experienced driver in his 36th runoffs. He's finished on the podium 17 times. He has 25 top 10s. He has won this race twice, including here at VIR in 2019. And also in 2020, so back-to-back wins prior to last season. So Mark Boden, no stranger, and to see him 1.5 minutes behind another competitor really is a surprise for me.
It is, and if you remember back to 2019, actually, very similar conditions to this, very similar circumstances to this, until the very last lap, the Mustang of Andrew Aquilante lost a timing chain and was not able to finish the race at full pace. Boden caught him quickly, cruised right by, and took the national championship. So if you think this one is over and sealed because of that one lap advantage almost that Aquilante has built, it certainly is not, and it's panned out in the past actually for Boden's favor.
There's a reason they run the races. You don't pass out the medals until the checkered flag flies. So Mark Boden knows what he needs to do is just keep his nose clean. As that car getting a little fishtaily as he comes through the Oak Tree Bend and makes it down the back straightaway. Mark Boden. Kind of a lonely race. Do you find a problem with motivation in a situation like this where you can't see the guy that you're chasing?
No, going back to that sink or swim thing that Aquilani's dealing with now, put the blinders on and drive the car, because these conditions are so intimidating.
Yep.
And it takes so much of your bandwidth to control the car, make the decisions, understand what the car is telling you. Maybe do I push a little harder? Do I not? There's so much going on in these conditions that I bet a lot of drivers would actually rather just kind of have the track to themselves and race the track than try to race another car. Aquilante is now catching the 3rd place car, Sandy Satullo, for going down a lap, but I was going to point out Boden and Aquilante personal best laps last time through, so the drivers are still getting quicker and quicker and quicker.
As we're into the closing stages, we have about 7.5 minutes left, but we are working race lap 14, so we're going to get all 15 laps in here, barring a catastrophe. As once again, there will only be 2 cars on the lead lap when the checker flies as they make their way down the hill. Sandy Satullo with Andrew Aquilante looking for a way around. Satullo wanting to stay on the lead lap if he can. If there would be a safety car, he would be able to stay in contention, but I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion as Andrew Aquilante pulls off to driver's left and blows by on the front straightaway. So now only 2 cars left on the lead lap as we are working race lap 15. The white flag is in the air.
It's an experienced choice that an experienced driver would make, to wait till the straightaway to kind of not push the issue, especially on a lapped car in these conditions. Wait for the straightaway and get by easily. And especially in a low-risk position on track. After they'd cleared the puddles, after they were going very nice and straight, he put the car in the position to go by. As now Boden has picked up almost 3 seconds more on his personal best lap this time through. He's now lapping close enough that if he started here, if we restart this race right now, we would have a pretty good race between Aquilante and Boden. But that's the experience of Aquilante in these conditions showing.
Exactly right. As
he got there a lot quicker.
Makes it through the snake on the final time, as he is cruising around for the final lap again, hopefully making it to the end for his 12th national championship. Through the climbing S's, up over the curb. That car just handles the bumps so beautifully. You know, we talked about it, the Mustang just, you know, able to get through the lateral acceleration of this racetrack and over the bumps so easily without upsetting the chassis at all. As he comes through Oak Tree for the final time and down the back straightaway.
Look at that, just parks it on the apex, pivots to the grass basically on the right side of the track, puts his foot down, and you can hear the engine spin just a little, but that car rockets off off of Oak Tree Corner down the back straightaway, and that's what Hayward started the broadcast with, and it's panning out to perfection in front of your eyes for Aquilante as he gets now on the brakes pretty early for Oak Tree Corner. That's because this braking zone is very slippery in the wet, straight out to the apex.
Down the roller coaster he comes as he works his way through turns 15 and 16 and then into the famous hog pen turn. And that is the last turn he'll have to negotiate, aside from the little bend in the front straightaway. As Andrew Aquilante from the pole, a flag-to-flag victory for his 12th national championship. This young man is doing a fantastic job here in this race, and he's not done. We'll see him a little later on as the checkers flies for Andrew Aquilante, taking the championship in Touring 1 in the 2022 National Championship Runoffs.
Caps it off with a personal best lap for a cherry on top. But now the first driver to see the checkered flag after Aquilante will actually be Sandy Satullo. Brings home a third-place finish from 6th on the grid in his E92 BMW M3. A great finish for the driver out of Florida. And now that he's seen that checkered flag, we can look to our second-place driver, Mark Boden, who's still navigating the uphill S's in his fall line BMW.
Just coming into South Bend as he works his way up the hill for the final time. Mark Boden will be on the box once again. It'll be his 18th top 3 finish in his runoffs campaign. 2020 Touring 2 Super Sweep winner. Stepping up to Touring 1 this season, as his win at Road America and VIR was in T2. So stepping up to T1 this year as he crests the hill.
Listen to that thing sing as he pulled away from our camera angle there. That thing is one of the best sounding cars in the paddock, I will always say.
Onto the brakes for the final time. Down the roller coaster. What a beautiful racetrack this is. And even in the wet, it's still picturesque. But sadly, it's going to be a wet weekend, we fear. As onto the front straightaway comes our final podium finisher and the final car on the lead lap. And that is Mark Boden as he approaches the flag. We can get the official margin of victory for you over Andrew Aquilante, 1 minute, 53.637 seconds. We've had 2 races in a row with nearly a 2-minute margin of victory as Andrew Aquilante gets title of Rainmeister here. In fact, just as the second place car is entering turn 1, Aquilante is getting ready to head into the pit entrance. Of course, he'll come down into the view of Hayward Wagner, who will have a chance to interview our top 3 finishers. But no stranger to the top step of the podium is Andrew Aquilante. As he comes into the pit lane, his hand out the window, saluting the workers and the fans here as he enters the pit lane victorious in Touring 1 of the 2022 National Championship Runoffs. Aquilante out of Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. The Phoenix Performance Hoosier Hawk and Mobile sponsored machine. His 12th National Championship. There's your list of finishers. Unofficial, of course. Aquilante, Mark Boden in second, Sandy Satullo in third, Robert Corzin holding off Joseph Gaudette for fourth. Actually, Gaudette, I believe that's wrong. Yeah, Gaudette did make his way up to fourth, unless a penalty's been assessed that we're not aware of. Robert Corzin finishing in the 5th spot, Tim Myers in 6th. Timothy Rubbright had an eventful day, but comes home in 7th. And Paolo Salvatore finishing in the 8th spot. As Hugh Stewart and Joe Aquilante did not take the green flag. So Andrew Aquilante is your winner for sure. As the last of the field working its way into pit lane, it sounds like Hayward Wagner has got our winner down on pit lane.
Andrew Aquilante getting the medal, getting the hat. Andrew, I just have to start with, how much do you love this race car?
This car is wonderful. Little bit of a payback for a few years ago here. The track, the rain was Woo, this place is slick. This was not an easy one, keeping it on the road and all that sort of thing, but kept it pointed in a straight line, pulled the trigger when we needed to, and here we are.
What are you thinking about on a lap of VIR and weather like this when you have the lead in the race? Are you watching gauges? Are you managing traction? What is your focus? What keeps your focus during a race like this?
Well, with the weather we had right now, it felt like it was changing every lap, every corner, like come around, like from the roller coaster on down, turn one, I'm like, oh, it loosened up a little, it backed off a little bit. Get through the snake, and I'm like getting, a little more confident, and all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute here, hold on, and so gusty winds kind of pushing these cars around a little bit, and yeah, not much looking at the gauges, more just trying to watch for puddles and keep it pointed on the straight and narrow, because this place is not fun to get offline and not fun to go off the road, because you're going to slide for quite a while. So,
well, we owe you a big congratulations. This one's number 12. Enjoy this victory lap.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody, Phoenix Performance, my dad, mom, all the guys. This is, like I said, this one's a little bit more redemption. I wasn't quite sure I wanted it to rain, but I'm like, all right. Now we'll just see what happens for Sunday in GT2.
Andrew Aquilante looking forward to perhaps another championship. I would guess he's going to run this car if it's wet.
Yeah, that was a little wink, wink, nod, nod there to what he had hinted us into, but we'll have to wait a couple more days to find out what he does for his 13th championship attempt. But number 12, I mean, a dozen championships and many, many in this car, in this class. It's spectacular to watch.
Indeed it is, as our second and third place finishers making their way down to the pit lane, as we're just waiting for Hayward to get over to have a chat with them. Andrew Aquilante, by the way, we haven't mentioned it, was also the 2007 winner of the President's Cup, selected by the stewards of the meeting and the chief steward to the driver best demonstrating ability, competitiveness, and success at a national championship event. Hayward Wagner has got our second place finisher, Mark Boden.
Mark, have you ever had more fun in a race car than you did today?
Yeah, thanks to all the guys at Fall Line. Car was great. Andrew's obviously phenomenal in the rain. Not the best rain car out there. Great in the dry. Hoosier tires were great. Yeah, it was trying.
A little bit of a handful,
but a lot of fun. Always love being here at the. I'm actually going to trademark it, the Rainoffs. It's now going to be known.
So Mark Boden, another podium finish here at the Runoffs. We got Sandy coming up. Big handshake. Sandy, it looks like you might be a little bit less experienced than Mark in the rain. Is there some truth to that?
Well, maybe overall rain, but we were calculating before this weekend. I have probably over 14 hours in the rain here at VIR. So I was kind of probably the only one here this weekend hoping for the rain. But, just we knew going into the race, if we could keep all four on the pavement, that we'd probably move up maybe a spot or two. So that was the goal, just give yourself the chance at the end.
Don't take yourself out.
Exactly, yeah. So,
well, congratulations here on the podium. Is your first Runoffs podium?
Second, yep. Yeah.
So, second of, I bet, many more to come.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Sandy Satullo, a great drive. Again, qualified outside of row number 3 and comes home on the box in third spot, albeit a lap down to this man who put a spanking on the field, I think, for want of a better term.
Well, the strategy of keep it on the track is the best. He moved up from 6th to 3rd, and it happened mostly right here in turn 1, on the brakes into turn 1. He's already up to 2nd position. He would ultimately lose that spot to Mark Boden on his outside, but very tight racing to kick this thing off.
Exactly. With the highlights package, there's the spin on the first lap by Joseph Gaudette. A great recovery drive for him as he gets back to 4th at the end of the day. There's Satullo in second spot in the early going, but then Boden got comfortable and ran him down, eventually taking over that second spot and by a bunch. There's the 88 of Robert Corzin.
Big hydroplane incident for the number 7 car in the middle of the race. A very, very scary moment, but kept it out of trouble. And then this was that awesome pass, the battle for 4th, as Joseph Gaudette finally navigated around the 88 of Robert Corzin to bring home that 4th position.
Yeah, he followed him for several laps, looking for a way around, really struggling as he got down onto the front straightaway, but finally able to make it happen and dropped a wheel off in the climbing S's.
Big shot.
It's an epic shot indeed. I'm sure that was a heart-in-the-mouth incident, but nobody was stopping this guy as Andrew Aquilante taking championship number 12 in commanding fashion here at the 2022 National Championship Runoffs. So that'll do it for Touring 1 here at the Runoffs. I'll be giving my seat over to Greg Kramer, who will bring you the next race on the card. But on behalf of our entire crew here, including Tom O'Gorman and Hayward Wagner, I'm John Phippen, and thank you so much for being with us on a rainy day at Virginia International Raceway. We'll see you down the road.
Why race? Because it's in our blood. A love of driving that pushes us as hard on the road as it does on the track. It's why we reinvented the Roadster and put a piece of it into every car we make. It's why we refine, rethink, and refine again. And it's why we'll always engineer to your heart's BPM, not simply an engine's RPM. Why race? Why indeed?